When you think of comics, what comes to mind? Superman? Spider-Man? The X-Men? Well, the world of comic books is finally changing, with South Asian characters being developed for the first time ever. Desi DNA presents an exclusive insight into the major players who are turning their fantasy into reality. Be prepared to be propelled into the super league of comic strips and graphic novels. Welcome to the world of Asian superheroes, hijab crusaders, and all things spandex.
Francis Lee is the mastermind behind the comic sensation Tales of Midnight, and 23-year-old Asia Al-Fassi has just been involved in a bidding war for a Muslim manga graphic novel. Hot on their heels comes Sir Richard Branson's Virgin Comics, who've created modern and mythology-based Indian characters for the rapidly growing South Asian market and beyond.
Everyone knows the classic superhero angst-ridden tales of characters trying to find love or fighting off bullies until some freak accident gives them a superpower or ability. Comic strip aficionado Francis Lee has had a very similar journey with his comic book phenomenon, Tales of Midnight.
Born in India but raised in the UK, Francis Lee was forever getting into fights with skinheads in the 1970s. After learning martial arts to defend himself, a keen comic reader from day one, Francis went a step further and totally geeked out and opened up his own comic book shop.
So how do you come from being a fan to then actually getting your own comic book out?
Okay, well, I guess for me it was luck more than anything else. I've been a fan all my life, and as a fan I had a collection of comics which just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it got to the point where there were literally thousands of comics, and they were filling lots and lots of boxes in my home. So it was either a question of getting a bigger place or opening a comic shop, and that went well for several years. And then what happened was, at that particular time, it seemed as if the industry seemed to be moving more towards collector's items and special editions and, you know, flashy covers, rather than worrying too much about the story and the content. And being a fan myself, I was also, you know, disappointed that we weren't getting the kind of stories that I wanted to read. Comics, to me, were a doorway to step into a world that allowed me to enter this world of heroes and romance.
I'm on my way. And so Francis created and self-published his comic, Tales of Midnight, which follows the adventures of two crime fighters, Midnight and Sarah, who, complete with utility belts and gadgets in sexy blue spandex, take on whoever stands in their way.
At the time, it made a big impact on me. For example, with my character Midnight, he'll never kill. End of story. No way. There's no motivation.
But he's a lawbreaker, though, by night.
He fights for justice, and justice in his eyes is not necessarily the laws made by man.
I've got to say something about Sarah, though. She's damn sexy.
She's very sexy.
I mean, you have not sort of been shy, have you, in her figure and stuff?
If you had any idea how many people have asked me to reduce the size of her boobs, it's... but no, she's all woman.
Has she had a bit of work done?
No, absolutely not. It's just good, clean living and healthy exercise and...
Well, I'm now fancying a comic character.
Isn't it interesting?
It's interesting.
Isn't it interesting?
Meanwhile, behind the facade of this innocent-looking bookstore, there lurks the secret workshop of a genius.
Asia Al-Fassi is a 23-year-old student and cartoonist who's causing ripples across the UK as the first female Muslim manga artist.
Asia, explain to me, what is manga?
Manga is the Japanese form of comic art, and it started many years ago, but only after Second World War it started being really known, and it's characterized with the large eyes and different colors of hair, and it's huge in Japan, and it's getting bigger elsewhere, so things like Pokemon.
So do you combine your faith with the work that you do?
Definitely. The main character is a girl who wears a hijab. All my protagonists at the moment, and all my stories, wear the hijab, and it's in different situations each time. So one of them's in Libya, that's a biographical, and there's the one in the UK, and another in a fantasy world, but they all wear the hijab. Just because she's wearing a hijab doesn't mean that she can't do anything anymore. She can only breathe and sit in a corner. even watching TV sometimes when we're speaking about Islam, is, oh, the women in Afghanistan, finally they'll be free, and then they have this, you know, walking wearing the hijab. And I'm thinking, oh no. So I just wanted to tell my story.
Asia's story caused a media frenzy, with leading publishers, including Penguin and DC Comics, battling it out in a bidding war to publish her manga novel. A late contender, Bloomsbury, then entered the frame and offered a lucrative 2-book deal.
Holy hole in a donut!
And how do you feel about the label that you're the first female Muslim manga artist?
It's certainly nerve-wracking, but at the same time it's very humbling. I was hoping that I can use my own culture, my own religion, not to sort of say preach or something like that, that is not the point, but it's to produce characters and stories set in places that aren't usually, and maybe get people to know more about these places so that they don't fear what they don't know.
Virgin Comics is a collaboration between writer Deepak Chopra, filmmaker Shekhar Kapoor and maverick Sir Richard Branson. Their mission is to fuse Indian mythology with comics, animation, film and computer games.
I met up with the CEO of Virgin Comics, Sharad Devarajan.
We look at India, we see that there's going to be over 550 million people under the age of 20 in the next 10 years. So one of the largest youth markets anywhere in the world, and a market that has never really had its own real definitive heroes.
One of Sharad's earlier projects was to give Spider-Man the Desi treatment.
We took the essence of the idea of Spider-Man, but worked with Marvel to actually reinvent him as an Indian boy growing up in the streets of Bombay. The fear or the concept that we're tapping into in terms of this Indian comics is really the concept of man versus mythology. And the concepts that we find the world struggling with today about destiny, you know, about the concept of good and evil and really exploring, is it so black and white? You know, Eastern philosophies have always explored the gray. We look at those ancient myths of India as a great source of inspiration, but our Devi, for example, takes place in a very contemporary world. Snake Woman takes place in Los Angeles. You know, the Ramayana takes place in a futuristic, post-apocalyptic world. So what we've done with those myths is tap into the seed of the ideas that they represent on a philosophical level, but then bring those seeds into a very contemporary, modern story.
It is clear that the creation of original stories and South Asian characters, whether based upon Indian mythology or Islam, have spawned serious potential. Perhaps one day we'll see them come to life at a cinema near you.